It seems like in the last few months and weeks, I've been seeing a lot of mentions about nuclear option, okay, nuclear strike. These are all terms that have been, I guess, tossed around in articles and by analysts and now apparently politicians. I believe it was yesterday, a senator from, I think it's Missouri, a Republican senator, and now keep in mind, this is a senator, okay? There's not as many of those, and they are the kind of the upper echelon of the legislative branch, the process. They're the adults, if you will. He mentioned that if Russia were to invade Ukraine, that we have a responsibility to stop that from happening militarily, and that we have a nuclear strike option. Really, this is a senator that said this, okay? And he said it publicly, so you can be sure that Moscow heard it. It's not something you say. And if you're a leader of a foreign nation, the one that he's talking about, namely Russia, it's not something you ignore. Now, that might seem overblown, okay? That might seem like insanity. It might seem like stupidity. But I don't think it is. And I think it's a mistake to think of them as stupid. Okay? To just dismiss them in that way. Because, I mean, it sounds stupid. Okay? Yeah, I get that. But that's almost what they would rather you believe. Because in reality, I don't think they are stupid. I don't think senators and representatives are stupid people. I think they're evil. I think they're out for their own best interest as a general whole. But stupid? No. You don't get to that level of politics by being stupid. It just doesn't. It's almost like that's what they would want you to think. So why else would he say something so outlandish and provocative? Well, there are other reasons. The Ukraine is not part of NATO. Now, it's been wanting to become part of NATO, and if it were to become part of NATO, if you know geography, you know it sits right on the Russian border, and it's a very, very strategic location. One thing to keep in mind about Russia itself, there are 3 federal cities, and these cities are under federal control. The Russian Federation basically has jurisdiction over those cities. Number 1 is, of course, Moscow. 2 is St. Petersburg. 3 is Sevastopol. Where is Sevastopol? That's the southern end of Ukraine. It is a massive naval base, and it is the naval base that gives Russia access to the Black Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, and it gives them access to the Atlantic Ocean via Black Sea, Mediterranean, and then Aegean. Okay? They don't have many of those on that side. That's a big deal for Russia, and that's why that city in the southern end of Ukraine is federalized, because the naval base is that important. It's on par with St. Petersburg in Moscow. Do you think Russia is in a hurry to give that up? Do you think Russia's in a hurry to let NATO have access to that, basically own that naval base? Just give it away. It's incredibly strategic. And not just offensively speaking, I mean, it's defensive as well. It's Pearl Harbor, okay? what would be our motivations for protecting Ukraine? What do they have that we want? Do we have access to the Atlantic Ocean? We have an entire seaboard on the Atlantic Ocean, directly facing the Rock of Gibraltar in the Mediterranean. So that can't be it. I wonder how much Ukraine is worth to us and to NATO and to all the countries involved in NATO. It can't be that much, right? So what other reason would both Republicans and Democrats, because this rhetoric, this war footing, this war rhetoric is coming from both sides of the aisle, and they are really starting to push, okay? Really starting to push hard for a military option here. What would we have to gain? Apparently not much. And I think the main talking point and the main justification is Ukraine's territorial integrity, their borders, okay? So we have Democrats and Republican legislators, representatives and senators that are prepared to go to war for Ukraine's territorial integrity, their borders. That's very nice of them, considering our borders are Swiss cheese. And they push for that. But Ukraine's borders, no, that's important. We'll launch nukes, by God, to protect them. Let me posit another theory. Russia has diplomatic and trade ties with China. The more the United States and NATO angers and pushes Russia away and threatens them, the more it pushes Russia towards China. Now, that's bad for NATO and it's bad for us. But it's good for China. What have we done lately to demonstrate that we care more about America than China? Nothing. Everything benefits China. Even the rhetoric coming from Washington, D.C. benefits China. You see where I'm going with this? Where do their loyalties lie? I'm talking about congressmen, senators, representatives. Do you think they really love America? Do you think they put America first? Because I'm not seeing it. We're going to send servicemen and women to die defending Ukraine and their borders from a nation that pretty much already has control over the area. And now we're just sitting there poking them, just saying, hey, we're going to take all your base or belong to us. Where's our interest? Money talks. And we keep seeing it over and over again. Is America being put first by our leaders, or are they getting paid from sources unknown to prop China up? What's Ukraine? Now, if you had asked me 10 years ago whether or not I thought that our politicians and leaders would sell the country out to make a lot of money to a foreign power, 10 years ago, I would have said there's no way. Like, I would not have believed that. That's conspiracy theory. Today, I absolutely believe it. We are continuously and have continuously made every single bad decision you would make to destroy this country, especially on the world stage. They have done everything in their power to enrich themselves, get what they can while they can get it. And that includes money from a foreign power like China. China's rich, and they're willing to pay, okay? If we can look like the good guy and push Russia into China's arms, so much the better for China. They'll take it. They would love to have it. and they'll probably pay good money for it. What other reason do we have to send our servicemen and women to die and to talk about a nuclear option for a country like Ukraine? What's the gain? How is that in America's best interests? That is no joke. And the fact that a senator even alluded to that, and he mentioned it verbatim, okay, that's terrifying. Because make no mistake, even a tactical nuclear weapon could end it all. But just the fact that we're there, that we're talking about that, and that we have politicians, legislators, the people responsible for making law, referring to the nuclear option, nuclear strike, nuclear war, whatever word he used. And the fact that it's been brought up in an increasing amount over the last few weeks and even months. I remember hearing about it even months ago, and I'm thinking to myself, that's, what are we talking about? That's like Cold War stuff. Like, that ended when I was a kid. And now we're back to that? Do I think they would use it? I don't know. It would depend on a lot. I can tell you that we are already on track to have our economy ruined, right? Like, quality of life is decreasing rapidly. A nuclear conflict would only help to speed that along. Okay? I mean, you're talking about societal collapse, right? Like, casualties, unimaginable casualties. I don't know. I really don't know. It's being said out loud, and not a lot of pushback on it. Both sides of the aisle are Republicans and Democrats are on board with the military option here. So take from it what you will. A few things, this isn't something that gets talked about a lot, right? But it is something I know a little bit about in the eventuality of a detonation. There are things you can do. It's survivable, right? Depending on the yield of the warhead, if you're within 1 or 2 kilometers of ground zero, I got nothing for you. You're going to undergo rapid transition to plasma state of matter. But beyond that, if you're not exposed directly to the blast, I think it's anywhere from, depending on the yield again, but right around 13 kilometers or so. That's when the thermal pulse is dangerous. Now, anything hit with the thermal pulse at the time of detonation, it's really intense light and heat, very, very intense heat, as in anything that can burn will burn. That includes us for about 13 kilometers out from point of detonation. So obviously the trick would be to not be in line of sight of that light. And a lot of people would be, right? So the number one casualty you're going to see are burn victims. So my advice would be to have a lot of burn medication, burn cream on hand, maybe. Couldn't hurt, That would be one thing that you would want a lot of. Sterile bandages, that kind of thing. If you survive that far, you want to get underground as fast as possible to a basement. You want to get inside a concrete structure because the blast wave is coming. Okay, now the blast wave will be moving a lot slower than the thermal pulse. We're talking about the speed of sound here, but it is like a giant grenade. It will turn everything it touches into fragmentation. Basically, you're looking at shrapnel on a massive scale. So you want to be away from windows, obviously flying glass. You want to be away from wood, splinters. They'll be basically rocketed out at the speed of sound, which is bad for us. So the If you can get underground, that's great. If you can get closer to a center of a building, that's also great. You don't want to be exposed directly to that incoming pressure wave, because that pressure wave is immense. It is an immense pressure change, and anything it's carrying with it, you don't want to be hit with. If you get through that part of it, now wherever you are, you want to shelter in place. You've got about 15 minutes, give or take, before the fallout starts to fall from the sky. Now the fallout is the real long-term danger. Okay, that's basically everything that the bomb blew up is now irradiated, and it's been pulverized into a fine dust. That's fallout. Okay, it's extremely radioactive, especially after the first 15 minutes. That's when the stuff that was directly exposed to the gamma radiation, it's basically going to come back down to Earth. So it's heavily irradiated. So you've got 15 minutes, if you survive the pressure wave, to get to shelter and seal it up as much as you can. Obviously we need to breathe, right? But you do not want this dust on you. You do not want to be anywhere near the dust. You want to get as far away from it as you can, because it is still radioactive. Once you've gotten shelter, if you've got shelter within that 15 minutes, you'll want to get rid of all your clothes. Okay, you want to scrub yourself down with soap and water. Get rid of those clothes, put something else on. Hopefully it was in a drawer. It was basically protected from any fallout that, might have been in the air. Get rid of those clothes and don't put them on again. But you also want to completely scrub down your entire body. Now, wherever you're at this point, you're going to want to stay there for at least 24 hours for the worst of the fallout to finally settle. Now, a lot of this stuff is going to, depending on the yield, going to be blown into the stratosphere. So, that's a long-term problem. Nuclear winter, long-term problem. But the first 24 hours, really important to stay away from the outside period. Any exposure to that initial fallout that stuff is bad. It's real bad. Yeah, that's really all I got. And then you just want to, of course, try to go where the prevailing winds are not going, because they're going to carry that dust. So you want to go the opposite direction of the prevailing winds, and after that 24 hours is up. Don't eat anything that wasn't sealed. Okay, so canned food might be okay, right? But anything that was exposed to initial blast or exposed to the fallout especially, you want to stay away from. Water, obviously, don't drink any water that was outside. Even a little bit of dust, that radioactive dust, you ingest it, it's game over. Yeah, fun times. Maybe somebody should explain this all to that Republican senator that likes to talk about nuclear war. You know what? He probably has a bunker, right? Maybe we should find his bunker. Special shout out, real quick. Laura Ham, thank you very much. Laura got me a compass. Really cool. For my birthday. She sent it via Amazon. There's a quote on it. It says, "Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." It's from Emerson. It's brass, so that's pretty cool. Very cool. Thank you very much, Laura. That is awesome. I love it. But yeah, less cheery subject for this Vlogmas, but I think a realistic one. We gotta do something about Washington, man. We really, really do.